This video explains how through history, fake news and misinformation have influenced the course of events and the diffusion of beliefs not supported by scientific evidence. We will talk about the most famous and emblematic cases. To prevent history from repeating the same mistakes and limit the spread of fake news, we also provide some useful tips against fake news and how to prevent yourself from them. Fake news in different forms has always existed. The main difference between yesterday and today is quantitative. The net and all the communications born with it are an opportunity to everyone to be a source of information for a potentially very large audience and at the same time to be producers or diffusers of this information. Compared to the past, the mere amount of false or misleading information has grown exponentially. Today, even more than yesterday, information is manipulated and controlled for purposes that are always the same: economic, political, and social. The digital age has changed global communication. Greater speed, greater amount of information, the possibility for anyone to comment on the news, easy connection anywhere in the world. This means passing from a one-to-many system to a many-to-many system. After all, one of the reasons that pushes to produce false and shocking news is that of easy gain, money. It is the online advertising mechanism. Whoever publishes a web page and hosts advertising related to the article can be remunerated on the basis of the visualization. A shouted headline attracts more clicks, goes viral, then gets more views, which turn into more advertising revenue. The problem of the worrying spread of the fake news phenomenon in the digital era is given on one hand by the fact that these media give precedence to all that is new compared to known and debated events, because only in this way you can attract audience and therefore advertising revenue. On the other hand, through sharing, contents become viral. The sharing feeds algorithms that link users to contents similar to the preferred ones. The use of robots by computer experts in communication that automatically create false profiles to provoke or spread fake news or simulate consensus in favor of ideas and political candidates allows a manipulation that starts from below and reaches users one by one. The problem is certainly linked to the particular modalities of creation and dissemination of fake news, as well as the identification of their creators. With reference to the teaching of history through the use of digital media, we want to help you with some useful tips to read correctly the communication and to understand what to pay attention to. We will bring some examples of fake news that have helped influence historical and social behavioral events. The term fake news was born at the beginning of 2017 thanks to a tweet from President Trump regarding media allegations that Russian intelligence services influenced the US elections. Since then, the term fake news has gone viral, to use another term dear to the digital world, all over the world, and it is used in common parlance to indicate fabricated news that spreads quickly among users, aiming to generate strong emotional reactions. The first fake news in history is a letter that was never written by the Spartan general Pausania, who was considered guilty of high treason for his alleged intentions to betray the Greeks to enter the service of Xerxes, the great king of the Persians. In ancient Rome, fake news was used to steer people's opinion. The most famous historical fake news of all time, which changed the history of the world, it's about the donation of Constantine, which began the temporal power of the church. Until Lorenzo Valla in 1440 wrote the Discourse on the False and Lying Donation of Constantine, the document had a very wide circulation through the Middle Ages. If we study contemporary history, the Second War in the Gulf was also triggered by the false news of the presence of weapons of mass destruction in the possession of Saddam Hussein, which was later widely refuted.
This is never-before-seen footage of British soldiers invading Iraq in 2003. It was taken on the 24th of March and shows Royal Marine Commandos on the Al Faw Peninsula in the southeast of the country. Within a month, they had completed the first part of their mission, capturing Basra while the Americans went north and took the capital of Baghdad. Next, they had to find Iraq's brutal dictator, Saddam Hussein, and disarm him of his weapons of mass destruction. There was one problem though. Saddam didn't have any.
And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
So why were these soldiers looking for weapons of mass destruction?
An axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world.
And why did the Iraq War happen in the first place?
The security of the world requires disarming Saddam Hussein now.
7th of September 2001 shook the world. Al-Qaeda terrorists hijacked US passenger planes and flew them into both World Trade Centers in New York and the Pentagon in Washington. Almost 3,000 people were killed. It was the fear that Iraq could have a hand in the next 9/11, which would be even worse thanks to the use of weapons of mass destruction. The main source of those fears was Iraq's leader, Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein has a track record of using chemical and biological weapons against both his own population, and he used them during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s.
Saddam had even committed a genocide against the Kurdish people in 1988, killing over 50,000 according to Human Rights Watch, in part with chemical weapons. However, things had started to change after the first Gulf War. President George Bush had already decided to take action against Iraq. He was convinced of the threat they posed. Preferred means of doing that was through the United Nations, using sanctions and weapons inspectors to disarm Iraq peacefully if possible. In November of 2002, the UN passed Resolution 1441, giving Saddam one last chance to give up his weapons of mass destruction. The issue was, he didn't have any. However, Saddam's lack of transparency on that issue allowed nations to see whatever they wanted to see in his actions, with intelligence reports simply used to confirm pre-existing beliefs. Iraq had allowed inspectors back into the country under Resolution 1441, but without being fully compliant. For the US, that gave cause for war, but the Security Council still remained unconvinced.
Leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict.
As you might expect, Saddam and his sons refused. The US readied for war, while in the UK, the House of Commons voted overwhelmingly for the use of military force against Iraq.
Now, we study another fake news that has had incredible diffusion in the last few years, the flat earth. Let's examine the spread of the explanation in support of this theory and its scientific denial.
If you were able to look through the perspective of a person who thinks the world is flat, you would see this. The North Pole is right here in the center, the continents splayed out over this plain, and here on the edges you'd run into a 150-foot wall of ice, guarded by NASA employees with guns.
And how far that ice goes outwards. And when people try to go down there, they get turned away at gunpoint and put in prison.
The heavens are a dome that arcs over the flat Earth. The sun, the moon, the stars, they're all just little balls of light in the sky that move around just above the Earth's surface. Channels and Facebook pages, you'll see hundreds of thousands of followers. Google searches for the term flat Earth proof over time look like this. It's become incredibly popular. And polls showed that only 84% of Americans agree with the statement, "I have always believed the world is round." And if you're 18 to 24, that's more like 66%, which, what is going on here?
This is Earth, and the moon is over here. The sun is always casting Earth's shadow into space. It's always there no matter what.
Right.
Obviously, okay? It's just a shadow.
It's a shadow.
The moon
It's just a shadow
occasionally...
shining on blackness.
Yeah, a shadow in darkness.
A shadow in darkness.
So the moon occasionally passes through that shadow. And if you see the shape of Earth's shadow on the moon, it is always round. Always round. If Earth were flat, sometimes you get like a flat shadow.
Right.
We've never seen a flat shadow.
Right.
Now we want to help you to pay attention and to defend yourself from fake news. How to spot fake news. 1. Consider the source. Click away from the story to investigate the site, its mission and its contact info. 2. Read beyond. Headlines can be outrageous in an effort to get clicks. What's the whole story? 3. Check the author. Do a quick search on the author. Are they credible? Are they real? 4. Supporting sources. Click on those links. Determine if the info given actually supports the story. 5. Check the date. Reposting old news stories doesn't mean they are relevant to current events. 6. Is it a joke? If it is too outlandish, it might be satire. Research the site and author to be sure. 7. Check your biases. Consider if your own beliefs could affect your judgment. 8. Ask the experts. Ask a librarian or consult a fact-checking site.